As I sit here in my room on a chair, I was looking around and I noticed my Altair figure just kind of standing there looking awesome. And with all the videos by Shadiversity that I've been watching lately and how he depicts historical accuracy from fiction, I thought why not do that as well for some pop culture. And so I'm here going to analyze exactly what Ubisoft has done right with Altair's outfit and what things he has done wrong. That's going to include the authenticity, the functionality, and essentially the correctness to the time period which it takes place. So first off, if I'm correct, Altair's life mostly takes place between the early 1100s, which would make that the 12th century. And in the 12th century, things such as knights and European castles and things like horses and armor and things like that were all very prevalent regularly. And I'm looking at Altair's outfit, and there's some things that I'm seeing that do make sense for the time period, but also a lot of things that don't. And then also there's some things that I would add. One of those things being that, first of all, for the job that he has, which is being a assassin, someone that gets paid to go and kill someone for a price, likely because the person that they're needing to kill has some sort of influence, whether good or bad, is going to change a policy of a law or either something that's very prevalent that will change society. So again, so when I look at it, there's some things that I like about it historically and things I don't like. Something that I really don't like is how long his robe from the waist down goes. So with what he does a lot of climbing and rolling. And from what I've learned and heard, having a robe that goes down to your mid-shin is not something you'd really want to use when climbing a lot. In fact, it can actually kind of get in the way of things. It's possible that as you're climbing, when your legs kind of tuck in, if you mean to step on, say, a piece of wood structure that is holding together a roof piece, and you step on your robe piece and you slip, that can be detrimental and it could kill you. Something else that I also don't really like too much is his Red's stash here and how it doesn't really add anything other than aesthetic. There's really no functional purpose to the red stash piece that's hanging downward. The one that is actually inside of his belt piece, that I believe is also a piece of armor for the stomach, which I'll get to in a second. It doesn't serve much of a purpose other than it looks good. Especially again, if you're be climbing or doing things like using combat, typically having a stash that hangs so low, you don't want to be using that or have something like that with your sword. Now, having a belt that goes a little lower is fine, but typically it's actually kind of, your belts are gonna be kind of stiff because they're gonna be made of leather. I mean, they'll break in over time, but typically they were a little stiffer than just flimsy fabrics. And if you did get fabrics down like that, you'd want them to be a little shorter so they don't get in the way of you if you're needing to make a certain parry or making just some sort of combat move that might, where that piece of rope might get in the way. Something else again, that I'm not too sure of is the actual stomach waist piece itself. If anything, I think that instead of it being a leather, because back then wearing things like leather wasn't too dominant, especially like that, I think it'd be better if it was a either a chainmail or a gambeson, or even a brigadine if he essentially got like 3 or even like 12 separate metal pieces and made it into a brown brigadine of some sort. Then I think that'd be fine. I think that'd be more realistic, more historically accurate to that. And even then, I would suggest that he at least wear more gambeson on his robe instead of it just being this white fabric. I think if he actually wore real gambeson, especially if he's someone that expects to get in combat a lot with knights and soldiers who do wear lots of gambeson and chainmail and sometimes plated armor, himself getting in combat, needing to wear those things could actually be very effective for him and could work out really well. Along with the fact that I'm kind of surprised that he isn't wearing a chest piece. But then again, in another sense, that also makes a lot of sense because of all the climbing and things that he does. But then again, he could possibly put brigadine or maybe some sort of just small connected pieces of metal armor that still allow him to be rather flexible, more for protection. But again, something else that is to be considered is that he probably wouldn't want to wear chainmail because chainmail is really heavy, and if you need to be able to climb up or scale a wall quickly, or actually just do climb and do pull-ups and jump from a rooftop, which takes a lot of force and energy, wearing chainmail is not going to be ideal at all. So again, I do kind of see why, as far as being agile, what he is wearing overall does make a lot of sense. Again, what I take out is the longer piece of his little scarf that he's wearing there, and I would take off the larger bottom piece of the robe and just keep the upper piece, so that way things get less in the way and he's able to just maneuver things more. Now, something that I do like though is that he is wearing ram braces, and those are actually not everywhere, but there were some places really where wearing a van brace or a gauntlet even was rather common for protecting your arms, so that way if you're going in for a strike and say it misses or someone blocks it and their blade hits your arm isn't going to get severed or badly cut, keeping you from being able to fight. Again, I think though that shoulder pad that he's wearing with his knives, that is something I would change. I would make that into either a plated armor or a very hardened leather armor, much like that would be more like a metal armor or plated armor, kind of like what Ezio has done. I think some of Ezio's outfits, when he gets the full plated armor, it's pretty good. I think for him, if you applied how Ezio implicates armor and puts it on himself, put that onto Altiar, that'd be great. Because clear with how Ezio moves and everything, it works great for him. And something that I would also, looking at it, those knives on his back, on his upper right shoulder piece, I would take those off of there and probably either put them onto his boot or on his boots, or just add them as another layer to his waist piece, or even get a gambeson or even hardened plated leather and put those knives on there. Because with it like that, if you're going in for a tucking roll and you just end up tucking to your right, or you can end up possibly breaking the knife or hurting yourself if the knives decide to clip onto something or just something particular interesting happens. Another thing I would change that I think would be more prominent for him is going with either a black, gray, or brown robe. Because I think white, it back then I feel like it did stand out a little much. This particular white I feel like, I mean, not that people didn't wear colors, I just feel like that for what he does, wearing all white isn't ideal for stealth. If anything, you should be wearing black. It's much harder, it's much easier to hide in the shadow. But as for the sunlight, though, if the sunlight reflects off of him and he can prone or even crouch and hide something and the sunlight reflects onto him, the white can actually, in a sense, kind of reflect it and help blend him into a sunnier environment to an extent. And then something else that I think is pretty okay are his low storage bags. Those, if we go and look at this picture of a guy wearing gambeson here, you can see that he has little pouches on his belt, and you can tell that his brigandine, that it is very, that his gambeson is about mid-thigh. That kind of is where, in a practical, logical sense, that is where you want it to be. And he does have pouches there. I mean, I think the Altiars are a little big. I'd probably make them, but I think for what Altiar does, I feel as though wearing them the way he is wearing them, and for the things that he does, it does make sense. His boots, they look fine for what he does. I think it's interesting that he is wearing those chaps. That's fine. I know people back then would wear chaps as an extra piece of protection for your legs. But something else I'd also kind of criticize itself is the hidden blade, and simply just because of just its true practical sense. I mean, I think Assassin's Creed has done a great job. Ubisoft has done a great job at making the hidden blade look as practical and usable and functional as they can, which is to quickly walk out to someone, extend it, and quickly use it, essentially by like palming someone, basically palm striking, using it as an additional knife to palm striking. Like, they can't disarm you with it, or they can't disarm you, and it being that it's very concealed, it is it's a very non-telegraphed weapon, as opposed to a sword or a knife. You're gonna see them grab for the weapon and pull it out, and if you have a quick enough of reaction, you can see, oh, they pulled out a weapon. I need to defend myself, so I'm gonna do what I can to not get stabbed by that. Versus the hidden blade, if they come up for something like a palm strike, you can technically deflect that, but if you block that palm strike with your hand or your arm or something and try to move it, again, in the game they have ways to extend that to a knife that is about the same length as the assassin's forearm, giving you that extended reach and that extra lethality, along with the untelegraphed maneuvers. But I mean, there's still there's a range of things that you still kind of can't do with the hidden blade. I feel like it's supposed to be much used like a palm strike and dagger technique mix. I feel like is what fits the hidden blade really well. As far as the sword, so looking at the sword, it looks fine. It looks like it's going to be a very normal sword that someone would use back in the Crusading period, or during the 11th century, which is I believe it's a hand and a half sword. It looks like, with a curved pommel, and the crossguard is a little fancier than most. Something that I would change, if I go over here and look at his sword, I would make the crossguard a lot thinner down that way, because I bet that with how the crossguard is, how thick that the wings are, it would add quite a bit of weight. So something I might do is, when crafting it, is make outline holes either in the crossguard to down its weight, or make it much thinner. Something else that I see in some games, but in the case of my Ezio figure I have here, the sword handle it's fine. It's flatter than the blades, so you can actually get more overall control with it. And it looks like it has a pretty good thickness. There's nothing wrong with the centerpiece that I see there. It connects well. So overall, I think his sword it is rather practical and something someone might use back in that period if depending on their origin of area. So I think they did a good job studying what swords look like from the 12th century and kind of decorating it enough to where it's iconic, but not so much that it becomes fantasy, which again I really like. Again, going back to his outfit, if we were to make it more practical in a combat sense, what I would do, what I would suggest you do is get, again, just wear brigadine, cut down the robe to where the robe piece that is in front there is the primary robe piece, or the longest robe piece that there is. Get rid of the 2 lengths of the red stash, or at least wrap it around something else, or even use it as an additional piece to the sheath even, but get rid of that. I'd say put on either leather plated pauldrons on both shoulders, extending down to just, I'd say just above the where the shoulder is where the shoulder is able to reach up, so that way he can get that full the full use of his shoulder without having too much restriction. So even though his shoulder pauldron might be kind of far back, what you could do is give him more brigadine and raise that brigadine up to that other shoulder piece to give him more protection for that. And that way he doesn't lose his range of motion there. Along with making it fit his body really well. So not making it really bulky or crazy thick on the forearms, shoulders, and bicep area. But definitely I think I'm not sure if this leather that Altiar is wearing on his waist is a hardened plated leather. If it is, that's great, because that stuff almost does just as well as plated armor against some attacks, or in scenarios as well. So there is that that I really like about it. With that as a sense of him being able to maneuver around. Again, something I would really just suggest you wear is gambeson under his robes, make his robes black, and then add either plated leather armor or plated metal armor to give him more protection when he goes into combat. But you might also be thinking, well, he also has enough skill to where he doesn't need to wear armor. And even though, yes, that is the case, in the game you still do get shot by arrows in the game, and I think that there actually is a scene somewhere in the video game where he does get shot. And what's interesting is that in the game he actually has a synchronization bar, not a health bar, which means that when you take damage you actually lose synchronization with the accuracy of the memory, meaning that he never took damage in the time that you play Altiar during that time period of about 1109 when he was in Masayaf serving his purpose. So there is that, but again, just to make things more accurate, again, you'd make his robe shorter, turn it into gambeson, and I seriously think that brigadine would be a great choice for him, because then you can still keep an assassin look without the armor ruining that look, but also giving enough armor to where it actually protects him in a practical and logical sense. So there's that. That whole thing. That's basically everything I would change about Altiar's robes. I think having a hood for him, I think that's fine. I think what may or may not be better also though is making that hood into a just a very thick leather hood, or even a hood made out of gambeson that is really, really strong, or maybe even putting some nice strong things of metal kind of all around his hood, so that way if he gets a head strike with either a scimitar or a bastard sword or even a long sword, it won't exactly kill him right away. You can still possibly block, and if the sword makes past his block and hits him in the head, it's not going to be detrimental to his life. He could also do that possibly by, if he wanted, wearing chainmail under the hood even, just to kind of save it from getting struck. He could possibly wear like a gambeson on his head and then put some chainmail just around that, and then wear his hood possibly, or even actually wearing a helmet that is kind of like that hood, just on the top piece, and making the bottom piece a gambeson or a hardened leather of some sort with broken in maneuverability for it. And then overall for the arrows on his back, you wouldn't see, I don't think you'd see arrows on someone's back nearly as much as what you would see arrows on his, let's see, if he is right-handed, those arrows should be on his left side, kind of where that, just below or about right at where that satchel is to his, on his left side. I think having it on the back, if he has a weapon in his right, if he's a right-handed fighter and he has the crossbow in his right hand, try and take it off from your left, might, well, I suppose that would work, but it's not very common. It wasn't done as much as putting it near the bottom. But then again, everyone had their preferences, and sometimes having it work great. I think that because those crossbow pieces are very, very small, I think in his case it does serve more functional than having it on your back. But typically having it on your back, it's just the amount of time it took to take the arrow piece from the quiver and putting it on the arrow was a little more timely than being able to raise it up and set it on, depending on how you fought. So there's my little analysis on that, of kind of what would make Altiar's outfit more realistic, more accurate, and more functional regarding both combat and agility for doing things such as parkour. Yeah, I thought I'd do it. It was a lot of fun. And I will see you when I see you again. Thank you.